Our next guest is in the studio. Simon Gichuki is the Secretary General of the Association of Public Sector General Suppliers. Simon, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Asante.
That's the hot seat of the Situation Room. You'll tell us a lot more about the Public Sector General Suppliers and the association and what you do, but to welcome you to the conversation, Mr. Muga has the day's proverb. This one is from the country of Chad.
Yes.
And you told us the president is called who?
The president
Mohammed
of Chad, Mohammed Deby.
Mohammed Deby.
Yes, Mohammed Deby.
This is the son of the former president, Idris Deby.
I believe so.
And Idris Deby decided to go and fight. And he died in the war zone.
He went to the battlefront.
Right.
He decided to lead from the front. But clearly he had a succession plan.
It worked.
It worked.
And it worked.
The guy is still there, so we would argue it is still working.
Okay.
Yes.
The proverb.
The proverb: the lion loves fish, but hates wet feet.
The lion loves fish, but hates
Wet feet.
wet feet. Simon.
Wow. Didn't see that coming. So we have a lion. We have a favorite meal that it can't get because it hates the wet feet.
The environment in which this particular favorite meal thrives. Yes.
Okay. I once had there's no wrong interpretation of any proverb, so I'll take my shot. I think every good thing has a cost. And in this particular case, the king of the jungle has a chance to get a favorite meal in a territory he can't reach. So in my view, they are very good things, but it depends whether we are willing to get into that territory.
Do you want to venture that far? Okay. Simon, what is the Association of Public Sector General Suppliers?
Fantastic. The association is made up of general public corporates who supply the public sector in Kenya. Public sector in Kenya includes any institution that is regulated by an act of parliament, is a government ministry, is a county government, or by its formation is through an act. Yes. So any corporate body, local, foreign, that does supply that. This includes people with what we would call the business names, limited companies, partnerships. We also have the foreign companies. So all of them become members of the association. And so far, those who've registered would either be the normal guys who are with companies, but they're above 35 and they're gentlemen, so they don't fall under AGPO. Then we have the AGPO membership. This is for youth, women and persons with disabilities. And then we have the foreign entities that are allowed to operate legally to operate here. So that forms our membership. Just to give you a brief, the main reason why the association came into being is because either directly or indirectly, we trade with government or with a public sector entity at any point. So that means that we have so many institutions and people who trade with government, but they don't have either a representation or they don't have a voice as to how things are being run. Or when things go wrong, they are not able to voice their opinion here and there. So that is why the association was formed.
When was it formed?
The association was formed towards 2021. So now we are two plus years, yes.
How many members are registered?
We have, if I may look at the figures here, we have the normal membership, about 1,450. The AGPO is at 2,837 as of last week, because I was not in the office the whole of last week. And then the foreign firms are at 191.
191 foreign farms.
Yes.
These are foreign registered farms.
Yes,
or
that are
foreign owned farms.
Foreign owned farms allowed to work in Kenya.
Okay.
Yes.
So the beneficial owner of this farm is a foreigner.
Yes, it's a foreigner.
He's a non-citizen of the Republic of Kenya.
Yes, yes.
All right.
Or an alien for that matter. Basically, you're not a citizen, but you're allowed to work in Kenya.
But you work in Kenya.
Yes.
Okay.
Why are they called aliens?
I don't know if it's our immigration law that gives them the alien card.
Because you say
but they look like us.
They look like us.
They're not green.
You get the impression that it's somebody from another planet.
From another planet.
These are very many members.
Yes.
1,450 plus 2,837 plus 191. These are easily more than 4,400
Yes.
members.
Yes.
Very many members. What kind of issues, since 2021, what kind of issues have you engaged in? Are you engaging just as members, or are you using the association to advocate for members' plight with the government?
So one of the things, we have about 4 key things that we work with. But one of the things we started doing was, first of all, education on how our procurement is done. I think every person, both in employment and out of employment, one of the things they look at is, how do I supply garments?
Yes.
And I think people think it's just a matter of there's a tender in the newspaper, please go take your document, and it's done. And there's more, of course. Okay. Your documentation has to be in order. You have to comply. Right. So one of the things we've been actually pushing people is compliance. You'll find that for example, you'll find a lot of people don't have, when we were doing the beneficial owner, they were not able to finalize the process. That means when you're doing your documentation, your CR12 is not complete. When it comes to our documents, you've been trading for 4 or 5 years, you still don't have books of accounts. That means when you're being asked for audited accounts, you're asking the firm, why do I need audited accounts? So you have to educate them as to why audited accounts are good. Now, when you do audited accounts, then brings in another body, compliance to KRA. So you have to explain to people that you need to supply to government. You also need to pay taxes, because the same government you're supplying to relies on taxes to be able to get money for the next financial year. So one of the things we've actually been working very hard is to lobby guys that we have to be tax compliant. At the end of it all, for that ministry to pay you, that parastatal to pay you, money will come from government. And government does not have its own money. It is the taxes it collects from me and you. Right. When it comes to the other issues of whether it's consulting jobs or the other jobs that require various regulatories, we're able to advise people on where do you get these regulatories to be done. The other thing we've been doing is, apart from the education, is lobbying. Because once you've done the payment, once you've done the supplies, I think the other problem comes in is you getting the payment. Which is the reason why you'll find, actually the reason why the initial reason as to why the association was formed was because a lot of people have debts. And having debts is not a bad thing as long as they are being paid. But now having a scenario where a member is telling you in 2014 they supplied and up to now they've not been given, so basically you've lent that public entity money for 6 years. Will they ever pay you with an interest? No. And again, there's nothing like, let me use an example of a public institution, even Standard Group. There's nothing like Standard Group. There's a finance director. There's a HR director. There's an accountant. So when we say Standard is not paying, let me use Standard. I'm not saying they don't pay. When we say Standard is not paying, it's not Standard Group. It's that finance director who is not able to articulate and find out how do I balance off A and B to be able to pay these people. The other thing we did is networking. And why we did networking is fine. You'll find that when counties came in, everyone wants to supply. So 10 of us, instead of joining hands together, we all want to rush and supply the same thing to the institution. So we undercut each other. So we are not able to compete. The last one was legal representation, where you'll find people want to go and talk to a county to push for a payment, or to a ministry or to a parastatal. So we bring them together and we are able to articulate those issues and to discuss with the management. So as an association, we do not... We believe things should work in a certain way, and that's what we are pushing for that to happen.
Tell me something.
Yes.
Individuals, organizations, companies, businessmen have been doing business with the government for the longest possible time.
Yes.
Are you saying that prior to 2014 or whichever date, well, I mean, you guys set shop 2 years ago, that these problems of non-payment spanning many, many years did not exist?
It did, but not at the magnitude that we are seeing today.
No, what do you mean? What magnitude? I mean,
okay, let me put it like that. I've been, I may not have prior information before 2013, going backwards, because I didn't deal with government before then. That's the honest truth. However, I've not encountered anyone who's come and told us. I've pending payments from either a ministry or municipal council, as they were called back then, or any institution beyond 2010 and going backwards. What we have are problems of either from 2010 coming backwards to this side. Because we have a case of a municipality somewhere in the Rift Central of 2011. But the problem was the documentation are not yet there. So at the end of the day, we have cases, but we've not encountered cases 2010 going backwards, asking us that, yes, I would want to join because I have a problem with going backwards.
So you assume that since they haven't joined, if they had issues, they have been resolved.
I believe there are issues and they've not been resolved.
Yes.
One, because we still not have not gotten enough publicity to get everyone on board. There are more than 100,000 companies operating in various aspects. However, I've come to realize over time, people write off these debts because the cost of following up the debts become expensive.
I see.
Yes.
Have you ever, maybe you're doing that, but if you haven't, have you catalogued and documented the various complaints that people have over time? Because for someone to be doing business with the government, the assumption is at some point you were paid.
Yes, yes.
Because if that was not the case, you would stop doing business with them.
At some point, you are paid.
Yes.
The biggest problem comes in three instances. The assemblies, not assembly, the municipalities before county government, when the transition was being done, that was a problem number one.
Yes.
Problem number two comes in when we split ministries or when we consolidate ministries.
Right.
Before 2013, we had 44 ministries. When His Excellency Uhuru came in, we were 22 ministries. That means a chief officer for a certain ministry is now transferred, and those documentation, let's say a ministry has been split into, and the government of national unity, the one for Kibaki, we had 4 ministries that are today 1 ministry. So when you're looking for those payments, there's a problem. Again, under His Excellency Uhuru, we had the same problem because now we have some state departments that will be consolidated.
And others will be moved.
So
if, for example, there's a time when you moved the State Department for Youth Affairs from the ministry to the Ministry of ICT, from the Ministry of Gender and
exactly,
Youth.
yes.
When that move happens, there's a confusion somewhere. That's what you're saying.
And then the other big problem we have is, and that's why I'm happy that His Excellency is pushing for digitization, loss of documents. Because ideally, government is a going concern.
Yep.
At one point or the other, that payment will be paid. Problem is, you must understand how the government documentation works for you to go way far back and look for that paper. And I'll give an example of, let me use an example of my part, because I happen to also be on the world of digitization. I needed some documents for a payment we were pushing in Migori for work we did in 2014. And I did not know, but I knew who was handling and where they were. So when I went, I did not go to look for that gentleman. I went to the office, explained the case, and I told them, I am well aware of how you do the documentation because I do records management. Beyond the other one is records management. And I explained to them. And by the time we were done, I was able to come out with my LSO and the voucher to push for payment. Unfortunately, it's never been paid, yes, but at least I have the documentation with me. So if we do not understand how it works, if today we merge another 2 ministries, believe you me, there'll be a loss of documents. Now that is even in the national. If you go to counties now, the first regime, there were 10 chief officers, 10 CECs.
Yeah.
Now we have about 19 CECs in some, 20 CECs in some, and each of them is a standalone ministry, whichever you look at it. As long as you're a state department, it means you have from chief officer all the way going downwards. Not a chief officer called principal secretary, chief finance officer, chief economist, your own accountant, and all these are, and that's how it works. But the government is willing to pay. But are we willing to go to the extra level of pushing for those payments?
When you talk about pending bills,
yes.
Well, you've told us one of the reasons why this association was formed in 2021 is because of that. The rising pending bills.
Yes.
At that point, just paint for us the picture in 2021. What was happening?
Okay.
These pending bills, where were they arising from?
If you look at it from any point, if a government gives you a job, that LSO they give you up there says if the I holder has signed, there's money. So by the time you're supplying the pens or the books or the chairs or building a building for constructing a building, the money has already been put aside for that to happen. What we need to ask ourselves is, how comes when the project is done, the money is no longer there?
So wait, let's go step by step.
Yes.
So there's a whole budgeting process.
Yes.
And then there's allocation of money for certain projects.
Yes.
Let's say supply of computers and books.
And that is given to the, let's say, head of ICT,
right,
with an authority to declare expense.
Nice.
So by the time he's telling the procurement, I need 10 laptops, he already has the
budget and
Yes.
a budgetary allocation
for
it.
that. Yes.
So he already knows my budget here is 10 million, Bob.
Yes.
Get me computers and whatever.
Good.
So you supply.
You supply, you get a delivery note,
Right.
and now you bring an invoice attached to the original LSO and to the delivery note.
All right.
And goes through the validation process and everything. Then it goes to the cash office.
Okay.
That is where the story starts.
What's the story that starts?
Because in most cases, this is the question I always love asking. If you look at the pending bills, parastatals about 450 billion, ministry 79 billion, counties 160, which is not what I think it's excess. Does it mean that we budgeted for this money and then the money was taken to other projects? So does it mean we had unbudgeted projects of 800 billion
that were
over a period of time
that were funded,
by the money that was
budgeted for other things?
good? And then, since these things were supplied, if you supplied stationery to this institution today and they didn't pay you, next month they'll still get another supplier to bring it. So question is, do they trade with the supplier's money? Or do they operate with supplier's money at zero interest?
Are they using the stationery?
Yes.
So what happens at this particular point? You are taking us through that step by step.
Yes.
You've brought your invoices, your documentation, the validation has taken place, it's gone to the cash office.
Then you're told two things. We are getting either money from the exchequer or we are processing, we'll have a meeting and then it should be approved. If it's a parastatal, the head of finance will approve the payment. And then in most cases, you will do a follow-up today, a follow-up tomorrow, and you'll keep following up.
How long typically should it take? 30 days, 60 days?
Ideally, there
Are
are
those specified in the
institutions that pay you within 30 days. Let's be honest.
Okay.
We are a great country. And there are even counties. I tell people there are 4 counties that you can supply, go home, and they will call you for your check. Comfortable. There are about 50 or 70 parastatals that will do the same. Ministries are okay. We have national government is excellent. They'll have teething problems at the start of every regime, which they sort within. Remember, every regime gets in through a previous regime's budget. So now this budget of theirs is where they have a problem, because now they have to sort the other problem and then start paying. Okay. So where we have a problem is where we have to push for these payments. And as you're pushing, every regime will do reshuffles. So no finance manager wants to pay fast before they validate. So now the process goes back to zero.
Aye.
Because that's what practically, theoretically, he should pay whatever he finds on the desk.
But he cannot pay
You.
without validating.
Can you even dare?
Because he'll be the one who has signed the money out.
Good.
Yep. The thing that I find interesting, though, even as you're speaking, I get the impression from what you've said that whenever the national government or a county government asks for people to bid for whatever service they want, it is budgeted for.
And there's money.
Yes. So, I'm going back to what you said. There's a great anomaly here. Even with all these changes that you've said, the records exist.
Yes.
Unless we're saying when there's a change of government, a shifting of ministries,
Guy moves with his
the
records.
records also move. Are we saying this? Because if the records move,
Yes.
then definitely you will have a big problem.
Because the reason why that happens is, ask yourself, why are we doing audit of pending bills?
Yeah.
If we actually knew in 2021 that counties owe this amount, national government this amount, ministries this amount.
Depends on who's doing the audit bills, or the audit process. Because if you're talking about the political process led, say, for instance, by governors who are politicians,
Yes.
Usually is to distance themselves from certain things, meaning they're telling the public, this is where we've started from. These other things are not really our doing. However, moving forward, we are going to do A, B, C, D. But more importantly, something which is not said, as you audit, you know who supplied what and how. And somewhere along the line, you will connect. This supplier is known
Is so
the
and
same
so's.
political process. This supplier is known to so and so. This supplier
Which is
this.
right. But I always say,
Yes.
even if, for example, for argument purposes, I was known to Major Badi, Major General Badi, and he gave me work to supply at the county of Nairobi. And I did my work and finished. And Governor Sakaja comes in. I should get paid for 2 reasons. One, immediately I invoiced. I paid my tax to KRA. Did I deliver? There's a delivery note. I delivered. Are there people in the office waiting for salaries? Yes, they are. So as we do this political process, it affects so much. And you'll be very shocked, out of this 700 billion, 30% will go to KRA immediately it's paid. Because people are being pushed by KRA to pay, but they're easily telling KRA, nikalipo hapa, naeza kulipa hii pesa. If it's a political process, then involve all the players. If we're auditing debts and you're saying, for example, the county owes 90 billion and 20 billion are fictitious, take them to ESCC. Because that's where this is, because that is basically fraud. But because you can't say, like I think there's a governor I had saying, Sitalipa, out of 2.2 billion, 1.6 billion is what I'll pay. Then 400 million forward to ESCC, because that is someone directly stealing from Kenyans.
And you've established.
And you've established that. Without that, let's be fair and honest to businesses in Kenya. Because we can't keep saying the cost of doing business in Kenya is easy, but we're making it hard to pay people when they deliver.
You know, I hear what you're saying, and I wish it actually happened that way.
Yes.
But the moment you bring in a discussion and you bring in the word politician, nothing follows the rule book.
Good.
Because a new leader comes in, and I'm talking about the county as well as the national government. A new leader comes in, he has his people. They have their agenda. They also have their people. What I'm saying is, if you were owed money by the previous government, you have an experience and you can tell us how you get paid, but you are not a priority.
Yes.
The priority will be the people who have come in with this current government. Now, what I would wish to see is what you're saying. Where government functions as government, it doesn't matter who comes in.
But let's look at it like this. We have the big tenders. I appreciate that. We are being practical. They're the big tenders with the interest of everyone. And they're the normal guys applying 5-10 million.
Yes.
200,000, 300,000. Higher. There are figures that should never even get to a PS or to a CEO or to a chief officer. 100,000, 500,000.
Yeah.
If we were a sober nation. Because a lot of these people... That's true.
Why?
A lot of these people.
A lot of these things they happen, they affect the guy who took a loan of $1 million to supply 10 machines.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he has to pay the bank and a few friends he borrowed money. So you as a governor, you're already making $1 million in your salary. Can you let this guy at least survive? So the biggest problem, even from all these people you'll be hearing is, actually we have a big chunk of the Agpo guys here out between 50,000 and $1 million, Bob. A big chunk of the Agpo guys. And you hear someone telling me, nili supply computer 4 years ago. Hata niliacha, your profit hasn't nisaidia. Because what are the margins again? We also have to look at the margins.
Yeah.
And the other most important thing I always say is, when we are holding this money from the suppliers, who is responsible? Because there's no institution like a governor. There's a chain. There's someone who is personally liable. Yeah. At what point do these people who are personally liable, at what point will we get these people to be
accountable for their actions?
Because a governor is not an eye holder. That's the honest truth. A PS is not. He gives direction and he has people down there who will push and ensure payment is done. So when we say that an accounting officer has a problem, even when they go to Senate or through the National Assembly, they carry with them the head of finance, head of accounts, so they can confirm, are these figures there? So yes, the political process is there for the big bills, because that's the truth about Kenya. But for the small people, siwalipwe.
Simon Gichuki is the Secretary General of the Association of Public Sector General Suppliers. These are the people who basically supply to government and government entities, whether it's national level, county level, parastatals, ministries, departments and agencies, all of those. We remember there was the woman in Olkalao who had supplied the county government of Nyandarua, and she had been waiting and pushing for payment. She went into depression, she died. And people actually in Olkalao took to the streets, said, you county, you have led to the death of this woman. Remember also the story of, was it Kisumu?
And you know why it touched us is because she was a grandmother.
She was a grandmother.
Yes.
And she had been running a successful business, retail business in Olkalao town.
Yes.
And then this happened. That gentleman who died again in, which county of Nyanza was it? He had a transport business. He was doing well. Then he even came to Nairobi. He was in such a bad state. Videos were going around.
He actually had a mental problem because the video that went viral was of him in his underpants.
In underpants, yes.
And soon after that,
he died. Yes.
And all these people are, when we talk about the 750 billion shillings, Simon, of pending bills, These are the stories. We only look at numbers, but we forget the stories. Now, you have members. Are there members, and can you tell us stories without going into details, specifics,
Yes.
of people who are owed by counties and who have now had to get out of business altogether?
I think we do. And I think I was just checking my phone because I remembered in March last year, there's a lady who just called me. We were in a meeting for suppliers and calls and tells her, I want to send you something.
Okay.
Then he forwards a photo and shows, that's my house. And that's my father's house. This will be the last time I'll show you the two houses. They are somewhere in Roiro, that Juja farm.
Mm-hmm.
Then I asked her, what's the problem? Because it's a stranger. Then she tells me, I supplied a county, and now we had taken money from a microfinance, and I had insured money on my father's property, which is the land, and my land. It was about 7.9. And I have done the road. Sadly enough, it leads to the governor's home. I won't mention which governor. And now, after 2 days, I called the lady, because now I was like, okay, so I asked a few friends, do you know the lady? And say, yes. The house was taken out by the microfinance, and now they're in court. That's one case. And unfortunately, she's well known. Nothing to do. The other one was, no, this is a personal friend. That's the reason why I was even happy to join the association. From a gentleman was called by the wife. They used to live in Rwaka, and he was told, kuna watu hapa. He said, what's happening? Then he was given the phone, akaambiwa, ile pesa kama ikuji, tunabeba vitu za nyumba. You had the accident of a guy went and ramped through the 2 rivers roundabout.
Yes.
That was a guy. We have another...
how much was he owed? And how long had
I
this?
think it was about 15 million, and it was for cabling, computers, and a software he did.
15 million shillings.
Yes.
To a county or to a parastatal?
No, that was a county. The other one was a friend of... actually a friend of an MCA in Mombasa, who camped outside the offices to push for payment. And she camped, and when she was done, she went, closed the office, and told the staff we are done, and went home.
She closed her own business.
Her own business, and went home, and now she's a housewife. We have cases of people who did roads, and now they have to juggle between a debt here, you borrow here to pay here, you borrow here to pay here. Because these figures are humans. And then behind a company is a person.
Yeah.
These are humans.
Yeah.
When they were doing, is it 2016 there? There's a time people were buying a lot of, I think all institutions were buying machines because we were coming from the old desktops and laptops to the new ones. I have 4 guys who have been paid about 40 million. They had supplied ministries and they had supplied counties, and up to today, nothing has happened.
And
If you look at the phone, at times, I remember the association at some point opened a debt collection firm. And we closed because you'll also go into depression. Because you go in the evening, the chairman tells you, look at all these things. And you look at them, you're thinking it's a horror movie. You go to the county, you ask them, what has happened to all this? Hizi zitalipwa tu.
Usijali.
Aina haraka. Aoni vile niko na mingi hapa zinanisumbua. And that becomes the story. We close the debt collection arm because we would have actually also gone into depression. And we're talking about there's a gentleman who did supply, because even the public did supply, it's called concrete, the one you supply when road is being done. And some of them have not been paid by counties. Now, consulting firms are the ones that suffer under ministries and under parastatals. More so if there's a regime change that has been occasioned by either the CEO was fired by the board, so the board looks at that and says, no.
This man was doing this person.
I have 2 friends of mine who supplied KEMSA genuinely. But because there was a hula baloo about the COVID issue, ilipotelea hivyo. But it was genuine. Now, question is, there's always a blanket condemnation when a certain area is being touched.
Yeah.
So everyone suffers there. A new governor comes into office today. If you supplied between last year, August, and now, that money forget. Yes. A new governor comes into office. As people who suffered a regime change because the governor died in office or was impeached.
So if there's an issue, let's say there's an impeachment,
Yes.
the deputy now assumes office.
Yes.
Things that were done by his boss or her boss
Because ideally the deputy governor, if we are to
is
be honest,
same office.
and has no powers when he's a deputy. Sasa akikuja hapa, si wewe ulikuwa rafiki ya governor, kwanza kaa kando.
What?
So if you look at it, we have, because most of them, I don't want to go to case because people relate, but if you look at it, you either have separated families, divorces have actually happened because you had issues, watu wamenyang'anyana manyumba to that level where now you're fighting physical. I have a case of a guy who they were going through divorce, and one of the things in a court case is a pending bill in a county that the wife also wants to get a chunk of it.
Zikilipwa.
Ni pate yangu. I have people who have to change their lifestyle because of that. Now, unfortunately, in an African setting, you change the lifestyle, a lot of things go wrong. Yeah. And what you're saying is...
That's true.
First of all, there's the flight of friends.
Good.
Unajikuta uko peke yako.
Yes. And what we are saying is, if you look at, or ask yourself why in the last 8 years, we've had high number of credit-only firms coming up. Because they know you love supplying government, so watakushikia hapo. You want $1 million, bring your car. I give you $1 million, but return in 3 months. You're hoping the county will pay you in 3 months.
They never do.
They never do. So
The car gone.
The car gone. So we have a lot of yards. The salvage Nairobi. Gari nauzwa. Gari nauzwa. Gari nauzwa. You remain like that. So we have cases of people magari zao zimeuzwa amerudi zero. Ama nyumba imeuzwa amerudi zero. Was it when was it that Michael? I think it was February. Michael sat in town. You see that roundabout? Now it's called City Market. Ukuje nikao unatokea hapa. There's a place kuna kuanga na an optical shop. He sat at that corner until morning, overnight.
Just
his house gone, his car gone, and I think he had asked everyone to house him for 2 months. He didn't know what to do next.
So you've run
he
out of
sat down.
friends who could house you.
In the morning, someone was passing, and so this guy is very neat. Because he started there the whole night. There's always a madhana kwanga hapo. Akaka, then a guy asked him, what's wrong? I compare story. He cried. The guy told him, come. Went, listened to his story and told him, okay, me I can only give you a job as an admin officer. You start your life. And this is a guy who used to high fly, supply government, get paid and stuff like that. Now, you have enough debt. So even if the government pays you, you're going to pay these people. You'll still be left with zero.
You have been reduced to nothing.
Yes.
Was
in
it
a country that if systems were working and if people actually were held accountable for their positions, such things will not be happening. Remember this 800 billion. We've not even audited the 2023 budget.
This is up to last year.
But
But the other thing that you mentioned that I find not only makes sense, but would help a government like the one we currently have in more ways than one. If you made it a priority to pay these people, automatically 30% of that money comes to KRA. Automatically. You go back into history, the same thing replicates. These people continue in business at the rate that they were doing it. It means they're actually generating incomes, and KRA gets to actually collect more and more and more.
And they create employment. Remember,
yes, they do.
You start supplying Kenya. We're the biggest economy in East Africa. You start supplying Kenya, you grow, you go to Tanzania, you go to Uganda. So by not paying these people, we're not only killing businesses, but we're making them not work. Guys, I know guys who've moved their businesses to Uganda and Tanzania because you get paid promptly. And if they were here, they know they would make more, the economy would grow. And as long as a supplier is happy, he employs more to expand his business.
It is very true. It's very, very true. Because wherever it is that the money goes, it doesn't go to growing the economy. Not really.
Yes.
God alone knows where it goes.
No, you know, that's a question though, Simon.
Yes.
Where does the money go? Because City keeps asking this every time. When you say we have 750 billion shillings of pending bills, like you've just told us, before the tender was advertised, the person who had the authority to incur expenditure had money allocated for this particular task. If it's supply of computers, money has been set aside for supply of computers in this financial year's budget, which ends in June, and we know June 30th. Okay? The person with the AIE holder tells the procurement people, get me a supplier.
Yes.
Supply is gotten. Supplier supplies. Supplier delivers. It is signed off. Yes, they met the specifications. This is what we wanted. This is the kind of computer we wanted. That's what has been delivered.
Yes.
Sign. We acknowledge receipt. Where is the money then?
I think much of it goes to one. You see that seepage they talk about in government, where there's always an unaccounted thing that happens.
In between the tendering process and the supply.
Yes, and number two, we don't have very good structures. That's why today you will not find any institution saying we can do business re-engineering. Because re-engineering means we look at the processes, where are we going wrong, but do you have the political willpower to do that? No. Even when the government says we will digitize, first things first, let's do business re-engineering so that everyone knows this is a process and it cannot be reversed back.
Aye.
Because you'll find someone amekwambia pesa yangu iko cash office. 1 month down the line anakwambia ilirudishwa validation. Sasa irudi tena kwa mkubwa, ianze tena safari. And then this, it's a good thing. But what I keep saying is, at the end of the day,
what's good about it?
What's the output?
At the end of the day, we'll have, in an institution of 1,000 people, you'll have 5 people who make the process look bad. Because you can't tell me an entire 47 counties, everyone is corrupt. No. You will work with some counties, and now there I can comfortably mention. Kakamega. You supply Kakamega, 30 days you're paid without calling anyone.
Kakamega, this one of Baraza or Kakamega?
The one for Paranya.
Paranya.
Baraza is budget starts June. We'll discuss next year, June.
Okay.
But Kericho, this one, you do it, they even call you to ask you, have you checked if miss? We're going to process your payment. Now, why do they do that? It's not their money. At the end of the day, it's government money.
Kericho of Daktari.
The one for Daktari Mutai. They do that for you comfortably. So we have institutions at work. There are parastatals who you supply, you send your invoice, you never even call. They're the ones who even call you if a document is missing. I'll give an example of Kenyan. There's something we were doing with them, and they've called for like a whole week. Please bring your invoice, you need to pay. But you start questioning, is that Kenyan Kenya or Kenyan another country? Because there are some institutions who are very happy to not pay you.
Yeah.
So what we are saying is...
No, there are individuals within those institutions who make it a point not to pay.
Good.
Yes.
I happened to work on a case for a friend of ours, and he just told us to do a letter to an institution to get his payment. And when he gave the name, it was someone who actually are in the same estate who is not paying.
That's your neighbor.
And luckily now I was able to joke. And you know those calls, you're like, hi, can we meet and have a drink? Yeah, blah, blah. Then I asked, oh, so why are you not paying that guy? And he's like, Mugani, within a week it was paid. Because he was embarrassed, because I kept asking him, now how do I look at you and I know my friend watoto wako nje?
Yeah. Yes.
And he was like, and it was actually 700,000.
What?
And it was for consultants. And I kept telling him, what your CEO is shining with, najua ni ya umse, because I read the document. Just pay him. And then he was like, ay, nalikwambia aje. No, he gave me your name so that we could write for you a letter as an association. Then I could tell the number is yours because it's on my phone. Because when he sent, I did the letter, then I was going to my WhatsApp so that I could send, then he brought a name. I was like, okay. Then you go to look at mutual groups. We're actually in 2 groups. One is for a meeting we have for business people in, it's called Ololua Forest. The other one is neighborhood. Then I was asking, surely, brother, naonanga nikipiga kelele kwa watu walipa. Si ulipe tu ataka ni yote. And then 700,000 based on their budget, they get about 15 billion. I was asking, brother. So the problem.
So what was it? He wasn't aware. He hadn't come to
within a week. He made it paid, and he's not even the topmost finance guy there. He's a chief accountant. That means he had to hurry to the CFO to pay. So we have a problem with processes that makes them manual to a level where they are controlled by persons. Unlike in instances where they would be automatic, such that if it leaves your desk, goes to the next, and it will be sorted. So as an association, the biggest problem we have is we also have to support government to automate so that now these people can be system-driven rather than people-driven.
But you know, this automation, there's something called an ERP system. Eh?
Yes.
You know of it very well.
Yes.
There are institutions who've actually bought and put them in place. I know of one, again, since we are not mentioning names, a very expensive gadget. I don't know how many millions it cost. It never worked from day one. Now, I had to ask, explain how it's not working. It's not that it didn't work. It was procured, and whatever was required to make it work, whoever bought it...
Never bought that part.
Well, even if they paid for it, but you had to go back to the person who sold it to you to be able to make it work. Okay? Whether it is the command or whatever it was. So this thing was a dodo from the day it was bought to the day it was installed.
Now that tells you, again, we have a big problem in Kenya for things called vendor-driven procurement.
Yes.
Which is now the problem is a vendor-driven procurement will always get paid. Because I went sold the idea to the governor, he bought the idea, supply, it's paid. Whether it
works or not, it's
a problem.
Second issue.
It's not his issue. Ashalipwa, ashaondokea. But you who genuinely want to supply government because you are either a quantity surveyor, you are a land expert, you are an engineer, you are an ICT professional. You know you want to help the institution. So you quote genuinely, you bring your documents genuinely, you add a job genuinely, and you do deliver. Then the journey starts. For supply in Kenya, your journey starts the moment you finish the job. You know, that's when you actually even get to know who is the CEO,
that's when your job starts.
Yes.
You know, when you talk about the delays and so forth, it's like the noise politicians make. Most people think that it's noise, but we've come to believe that a lot of it, not all of it, is negotiation. The more noise someone makes, the more he's negotiating.
Yes.
It's an opportunity for you to be called. By the same token, when a process that seems fairly clear suddenly gets complicated, it means it's being complicated. Someone is negotiating. I have someone I do business with who does a lot of business with certain counties. Again, we will not mention names. And he told me something I found daunting. I thought it was strange, but I have a neighbor who told me something similar. Told me he actually stopped because he was being asked for 70%. I said 70% of what?
Of what?
Of the money. It's possible.
Of what you build. Not of your
70%
profit.
70% of the invoice amount.
Yes. Somebody's asking for it. And more so during the period when the 5-year tenure is about to come to an end. I'm told people ask for ridiculous things. So it's either you pay or you don't get paid. So I thought, but I might as well not take the money. Because if I'm paid and you take 70%, KRA knows I received that money.
Now, sadly enough, you'll find some suppliers saying yes for one reason.
Yes.
It's either a total loss or you lose 70%.
But that 30%, where does it go?
What do you do with it?
What do you do with it?
That's why you've already declared bad debts in your books. At least now you get back. It's the way we sell debts. I realize I can never collect this money. I tell you, okay, you give me 20%, I'll forget the rest.
Okay.
That is where we have got.
So basically, that's what we are doing. We are selling debt to these individuals because it's not the government.
Yes.
The government, President Ruto had talked about at some point going to the markets with the pending bills. Has that conversation moved? This was securitizing pending bills.
Question is, even as we speak right now, ideally what should have happened is counties should have done a public list of all the pending bills. So it becomes clear. We do not know when a county says we are going to pay 2 billion, is your debt, is yours there, or did they remove it politically? So the reason why it's a good thing for him to do that. But then we need to ask our questions. Nani alikula ile pesa ingine?
Where did
Remember, out of this 700 billion, hata mimi nitalipa tax. So it will still cost me as a supplier indirectly because kuna mtu alikula pesa, sasa tena mutafute deni ili munilipe. So that cycle will never end. So what we want is, can people be held accountable?
Yep.
Right.
That position you hold, let you know, should anything go wrong, you need to... I look at a future where I don't know how many years it will be, whether it's my children or my great-grandchildren, where when you hold a position of power, where you're the accounting officer, and you don't pay, your assets pay the supplier. Because the supplier has a livelihood and has people to take care of.
And you're the one who is responsible for that delay.
Yes.
I get your point.
Yes.
So instead of saying here, let's securitize public debt, let's ask the question, where did the 750 billion shillings go to? Because it never went back to the treasury.
And His Excellency yesterday said they have released all the money to counties. So we are hoping they will pay.
They've released all the money.
That's what he said in Idalmat.
This is 4 days to the end of the financial year.
But they extended to 15th of July. So we are hoping that validation takes about 7 days.
Okay.
So that means they would actually settle half of the
So
159
days.
billion
So they have 20 days
to clear, let's say
to
half.
absorb this money.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Simon Gichuki is the Secretary General of the Association of Public Sector General Suppliers. He's been here. We've been talking about the pending bills. We've been hearing about pending bills. He's put some faces and stories to the pending bills issue. It's not about the 10 billion shillings or 20 billion shillings.
No.
It's people who are owed 100,000,
50.
200,000, 50,000,
Yes.
60,000, like that. And their livelihoods have basically just gone to the dogs. All because somebody somewhere has not put a finger to the paper.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.